Hi everybody, this is Trent Thomson here with Manitoba Wildlife Federation. I'm here today at Assiniboine Forest, just right in behind us here. We're going to do a little walkthrough on the forest here and identify some plants for foraging, both edible and medicinal. So just right here we have hazelnuts. So when you take a look at the plant itself, they'll be in more of a bushy types of clumps here. You can find this, it's very widespread, it is very common. It is around a lot of parks and campgrounds. When you see the leaf shape, there'll be a big oval. They will have this serrated edge along the side. And then what we're actually looking for here, the fruiting body or the nuts themselves, will just kind of be wrapped here. So there's two types of hazelnuts within Manitoba. There's both the American and there's the beaked. So this would be American, where it's got kind of a razored edge to it here. So typically what we see for hazelnuts is the opportune time to harvest is when the outer coating of this little shell actually begins to turn brown and kind of shrivel and peel back a little bit. If you wait a little bit too long, or within your area, if you have a lot of different animals that might be foraging on this, like different birds or squirrel species, they can definitely reduce the amount that would be harvestable within an area. So what some people do is pick them just slightly earlier, this being towards like the end of July or early August. So if you are still picking them when they are in this early on green stage here, again, you'll want to wait until these hit a full maturity right before they start turning brown. If these are harvested, they can be picked just at the base of the clumps here, separating out clumps of these different hazelnuts. You can then store them and dry them and kind of cure them in a cool, dark place. Keeping layers in between these stacks of hazelnuts as well will help with a little bit of airflow and just help those dry into the maturity stage. As at that point, if you go ahead there and you actually roast them, it'll add some additional depth of flavor to the hazelnuts themselves and add a little bit of sweetness as well. So once you've harvested your hazelnuts there, you'll just go ahead, you can use a nut cracker to break those open and expose the seed on the inside, either after roasting or before roasting, at which point there will be a little thin coating on top of that there, which you'll want to remove. It's nothing negative if you do consume it there. It'll just have a little bit of a texture to it as well. And then you can use these for standard uses like you would any nuts, or a very common one as well is like a homemade Nutella. So if you would add a sugar source, like a cane sugar or a honey, as well as some cocoa powder, you can just blend that up kind of into a paste and you'll actually end up with your own homemade Nutella. So once you've ended up in an area that does have a high population density of hazelnuts, they can be a really great one to forage with youth or first-time foragers. They do grow in a great abundance and it's a very easy thing to harvest. One thing to note about the hazelnuts themselves is you might be able to see on this stem, it does have a few of these like kind of prickly spines on it. Very similarly, the actual seed pods themselves will have some of these kind of fibrous hairs to them. Some people find it a little bit irritating to hands, so some people prefer to pick those with gloves. It's always a handy thing to kind of have in the bag as well when you are foraging. But a great thing, they often occur as well around campsites. It is one of the things that you can forage within a provincial park as well. So if you do end up in one of these areas, they are very abundant, very easy to find, and then you can pick them a large amount in a very short period of time. So right here we've come across some wild roses here. So wild roses, they can be identified. Sometimes they will be a little bit shorter, as low as 1 foot to as tall as normally about 3 or 4 feet, although they can grow a little bit taller. When you happen to locate a wild rose, as you can see on the stem here, there's a lot of spines on that stem. So again, if you are harvesting those, just something to watch out for. Don't get pricked by those. When these are flowering, we have just passed the stage here in Manitoba, and you can see the rose hips are starting to develop here. So before the rose hip does develop, you can see where the flower would have been previously. So the flowers are a 5-petaled flower. They are generally pink in coloration. And the center will be a nice bright yellow there where the pollen is located. Once the flower itself has been fertilized, as you can just see right here, the flower will actually die off and the petals will fall off, leaving a rose hip to develop here. So these will turn a bright pink into a deeper red throughout the year. They are high in vitamin C, so some people do like to dry these out and utilize them in teas or things like jellies as well. They will get a little bit sweeter after the first frost, and as you start to see just the start of the rose hip itself start to shrivel. So as these begin to mature after that first frost and they do develop a couple of shrivels on the outside, they are still good to harvest. It'll concentrate a lot more of the flavors there, so if you are looking to utilize it here, a lot of people say this is the best time to go ahead and harvest them is after one of those first frosts. They are very abundant and they can be pretty tasty as well. One thing to note is there is a seed pod with some kind of fibrous hairs inside of it. So if you are harvesting it and utilizing that, just don't break your seed pods open. Those seeds as well as those hairs can cause some stomach irritation there as well. And so before the flowers have actually died off on the wild roses, the wild rose petals themselves, they can be used for a number of uses there. They are an edible garnish that can be utilized. Some people will also use and collect a large amount of these rose petals and then extract that into rose water, which does have a number of uses, both in cosmetics as well as as a flavoring agent as well. So it's a very tasty one, very abundant throughout Manitoba, both in urban settings and out in the wild. So just right beside me here, we've located a wild plum tree. So wild plums do occur throughout a number of locations within Manitoba, typically around urban areas there, where they might have been relocated at one point or another. When we take a look at the wild plums, they look very similar to like an apple tree. It's very easy to tell the plums themselves when they are flowering. Again, very similar to an apple tree with nice bright white flowers. Same size, same shape, just a little bit more spread apart. The flowers are slightly bigger than a lot of the like crab apple species of flowers. But when you do take a look at the plums themselves, here we're still in an early development stage of the plums here. So these, as the summer progresses, will turn into a deeper shade of red. And they will go slightly translucent. That's when I like to harvest them. So plums, they will kind of grow in clusters on the actual tree themselves. Generally, you'll find these in small bunches. So as you can kind of see on the trees in behind us here, it's a few more active clumps than the individual one in front of us here. Just a tip, if you ever are out looking for plums themselves, kind of pan the area that you're in. A lot of the times from previous years, again, seeds that have matured and fallen from other plants will sprout other plants. So just look around in the area. Oftentimes, even just at a site, there might be, again, more plums in the general area. So a really good one to harvest. They have a pretty high yield. At maturity, they'll be about the size of a toonie for a large one. So if you can picture that. And then again, prime harvesting for these guys. You'll wait until they go almost fully red all the way through. Again, skin becomes semi-translucent there. That's when they will hit maximum sweetness. The skin does have a little bit of bitterness or tartness to it as well. So like our typical store-bought plums, wild plums, they will have the one pit in the center. So just something to be cognizant of if you're picking them. It will take a little bit of processing. You'll have to go ahead there and remove that or blanch the skin to remove the skin and separate out the flesh and the juice from the pit and the skin itself as well. But absolutely wonderful to forage, super tasty. You can use it in a number of pastries, as well as things like jams, marmalades, things of that nature as well. So a really good one if you're just getting into foraging for a high yield as well. So here we've just located some Saskatoon berries. Saskatoon berries are very prevalent all throughout Manitoba. They are a choice edible plant to be foraged there with the signature super tasty berries there. So Saskatoon berries, they can be identified by the key berry themselves here. It is a super tasty berry. In my opinion, I like them better than a blueberry itself. I find they're a little bit sweeter. So they are actually from the apple family. So again, they'll have a very similar flower pattern, shape and pattern as apple trees themselves. You'll see that when they do grow in kind of these tight clusters. You can see here these darker ones would be a little bit more ripe than some of these later maturing berries. Here in Manitoba right now, we are in mid-July, so we are just coming out of Saskatoon berry season, although you can still find some on the tail end. Again, very similar to apples, so when you are seeing the actual bushes themselves for Saskatoons, they will have a very woody stalk. They'll grow sometimes over 10 feet tall. So again, if you are foraging some, like right here and behind me, I just have one of these taller plants. You can reach up and forage from some of these taller branches just by coming into part of the more supple branches. Just one thing to note is if you are going to be reaching up and pulling some of these branches down, be very cognizant of the plant health itself. It'd be very easy to just pull this whole branch over and break the branch, which again, for next year, now we're not going to be able to locate or utilize some of those branches. So we just want to be careful that if we are picking from some of these areas, that you're very delicate with the plant, keeping that plant health in mind. Because Saskatoon berries can grow so abundant, if you do end up in an area where you've located, for example, like a patch of Saskatoon bushes, one thing I always recommend to people is not necessarily starting with just any plant and starting to pick, but rather finding the most abundant area within the patch and then just starting there. I mean, the more berries that there are in one area will just reduce the amount of moving back and forth you'll have to do. And then just also surveying the area of harvestable plants for yourself. It'll just help when you are going through to pick through. You already know the next spot that you're going to, instead of having to stop and look around. Just doing an initial survey of about 5-10 minutes of an area, just giving a trail a walk to go find the area that is the most abundant. It'll save you a lot of time when you are picking in the end, as you'll start picking in the most abundant spots there. So one tool that I find very handy when you are picking here, I've just kind of fashioned this bucket for myself. So we'll just give you a quick peek here. All I've done is just taken a rifle sling, and then around the handles of the bucket you can use a string or zip ties to attach to the handles of the bucket. It's just going to reduce the need for me to actually hold or carry the bucket. Now it's just centered out and located right in the center of my chest. So if I am picking, for example, like off this group here, I'm picking here, I can just pick a few berries and drop them in. Or if I'm standing in the middle of a bunch of Saskatoon bushes there and picking, a couple fall off. Generally, because I'm going to be picking right in front of myself, these will just fall right into my bucket. So again, just coming through here, combing out some of the more ripe berries for harvest there. These are great in a lot of traditional things that you would use like blueberries for. So I'll use Saskatoon berry pancakes, Saskatoon berry pies, tarts, jams, jellies, things of that nature. Also super tasty if you were to collect enough to make something like a wine. But these are definitely a choice edible. Again, something I would recommend to people entering into foraging or just getting into it. As well, a great one for kids to get into. Super tasty, and it's a really easy one for the whole family to do. So just right here, we've located the Artic strawberry, or Rubus articus. So this is a very common plant that grows all throughout Manitoba. They are very small in size. So typically these plants will range between 4 inches and kind of top out around the 12-inch in size. When you're taking a look at the actual shape structure of these guys, they'll come from a 3-leafed plant here. They'll be kind of, again, razored on the sides here. And then when you see the actual flowers as well as the berries themselves are produced, these will be, the flowers will be pink to anywhere from a pink to a magenta color. And they will sprout between 1 and 3 flowers. So one thing to keep in mind, again, because there is only 1 to 3 flowers, if they are successfully fertilized there, each plant will only produce something between like 1 and 3 fruits. So in this area here, again, we can see some scattered throughout kind of the forest floor continuing into the back here. They can be foraged as well. They are super tasty, very similar to your typical raspberry. And when they do hit full maturity there will be kind of a deeper red in coloration here compared to some of these ones that are just starting to reach maturity right here. So again, super tasty. A lot of people grow up in Manitoba calling these dewberries. They aren't actually an official dewberry or part of that family. They are, again, an Arctic raspberry. So again, if you can imagine it, almost just like a dwarf-sized raspberry. The actual fruit themselves are a little bit smaller in size than you'll typically see in your regular wild raspberries. but again, super tasty, super sweet. You can use it interchangeably as you would in any other raspberry recipes or anything that you would use raspberries in. So right here, we've located something that a lot of people may or may not be familiar with. It is something that everybody should be able to identify. Just below us here, we are kind of in a rough patch of poison ivy here. So we have some younger plants that are growing up here, as well as a couple more plants that are a little bit more mature kind of in this area. It is this 3-leafed red plant right here, as well as also this 3-leaf plant right here. So when we are taking a look at poison ivy, it's easily identified as, again, a 3-leaf plant. Just a rule of thumb in nature, leaves of 3, leave them be, unless again, you can positively identify whatever it is that you're foraging. So when you are taking a look at poison ivy, it does have towards the base there a slightly woody stalk. And as it does begin to rise there, you will see there's a red coloration kind of to these stalks as well. So they are covered in an oil that can be transferred onto things like shoes or like clothing as well. So if you have been in an area where you are foraging, that you come across this, again, taking proper care in your equipment or just knowing to take those precautions with your equipment that oil might happen to be on. This oil can stay active for a long period. One thing just for myself, last year I had been foraging in some Saskatoon patches that had a large amount of poison ivy. I didn't properly clean my gear, and then when starting bear hunting this year, started using that gear, and even before a lot of the green stuff started to sprout this year, I'd already contracted poison ivy all over my legs just from leftover and residual oils that was left on a piece of clothing or on my boots. Poison ivy does have a variety of stages. So when it is younger, sometimes it'll be a little bit greenish purple, and those leaves will kind of start to sprout curved, and sometimes even on an upwards 45-degree angle. When they are young, sometimes they'll have so much oil on them, they'll actually look like shiny as well. So poison ivy at this stage in its life cycle will mostly appear like this. Again, the red plant will be a little bit further along in its life cycle here, but around midsummer here, a lot of the poison ivy that we're gonna see, they're gonna have these 3 droopy leaves to them. Again, sometimes they'll have more or less razors to them. So just one thing to note, as well, poison ivy, it can grow pretty tall. So again, in some areas there, especially some areas where I forage for Saskatoons, these will be actually even taller than knee height. Sometimes they do come up to almost mid-thigh. So just being cognizant of what's around you, and if you get in and you are foraging on other things, just kind of take a peek around, make sure you're not standing in a field of poison ivy. Again, for myself, one thing I do like even in midsummer is I'll wear really tall rubber boots, and then I'll wear a long pants as well with those pants tucked into my boots. And then afterwards, if I am in an area with a lot of poison ivy, just the proper care afterwards to remove those boots with gloves and then kind of wash those down afterwards. There is a period of time before poison ivy does kick in. Some of that will be based off how allergic you may potentially be to poison ivy. People with, again, additional sensitivities there, you might contract it a little bit faster, but there is a little bit of a window that you'll have to go ahead there and remove those oils. One of the best things to remove oils with is a grease-fighting detergent or dish soap there. So again, something like a Dawn or a Sunlight dish soap. It's always something I'll keep in the truck when I am foraging there with some extra water, just in case, you get it on the hands, you get it on the arms or on the legs, that when you get back to your vehicle there, you can kind of do a wash down and remove some of these direct oils and just reduce your possibilities of actually getting poison ivy and getting one of these rashes. So poison ivy is very prevalent in a lot of areas, both urban as well as when you're out in the bush. Again, it's around a lot of different campsites and campgrounds, as well as very prevalent in provincial parks. So one thing just to note as well is, again, even if you're doing something just like campsite activities or even something like hiking, just to carry some of that Dawn dish soap around with you, just in case yourself or a child around you there happens to, again, come in contact with poison ivy. You can do just a quick wash off and then again, reduce your possibilities of actually getting the poison ivy rash there. So just later on in the season here, as you start to see some poison ivy, they will color out a little bit. So again, with our mature plant here, this is a great example. You can see they kind of start to bring in some of these more matured, typical yellowing out and redding out colors. you'll see those fields of poison ivy will actually all start to turn this color, and they will develop berries as well. So a good thing to note is, again, if you're in an area that you frequent and you come across a patch of poison ivy, and it is in that later stage, again, just identifying that as an area where if you do come back there in subsequent years, that it's one thing to be cognizant of within that area. So right here, we've just located oak trees. Oak trees are very common all throughout the province of Manitoba, a little bit more in the south and in the west, but definitely occurring all the way throughout Manitoba here. So again, oak trees, they do have their very distinguishable leaf. And then when you do actually go ahead there and take a look at the stalks, it is one of those very kind of rippled, typical tree stalks that you'd be looking for. These specific species of oaks, it can be a little bit difficult to go ahead there and identify the species of oak that you would happen to be working with. But the one thing that you can actually go ahead and harvest off of oak trees, while this may not be a choice edible, it is something that can be utilized in things like a survival situation. So right here we can see it's just the beginning stages of these oaks actually developing their acorns. So once acorns are fully developed, they'll have their distinct cap as well as the nut that's lodged within inside that actual harder exterior shell. So again, in something like a survival situation, if it was something where you were going to go ahead and harvest these, you can go ahead and pick them up off the ground or pick the fully matured ones off a tree. At that stage, you're looking for them to essentially be fully brown. And when you are picking them, you will need a lot of acorns. Once you have harvested them, you would essentially crack them open and then tasting the actual acorn itself in the raw state. You don't want to eat a lot in the raw state, but just tasting it, you'll taste how bitter it is and how many tannins, and essentially that bitterness can be used as a gauge to how many tannins are within the acorns themselves. If the acorns are too bitter, it's something that's probably not worth going through the effort to process them. Whereas if it is an acorn with a little bit less bitter flavor in it, it is something that you may be able to process into a food item. So typically what people will do at this point is with these cracked and shelled acorns is take the actual nut from the inside and then leach out some of these tannins and that bitter flavor by using warm water baths and essentially letting that sit for a number of days. These are something that do require a fair amount of processing, so you will need to change the water a number of times. Essentially what you're going for is that after it's been sitting for a day or two, changing that water until the water does no longer have color. So again, warm water bath, wait a day or two, flush that water out and repeat that process until the water runs very, very clear. From which point then the acorn nut itself, you can lay those all out and dry those out. So that can be done kind of in the little bit of the later fall there, in like on a nice warm day on some racks. And then once those nuts are actually dried, what you'll hear people doing is just milling that down into an actual acorn flour, which can be used as a replacement. Again, most likely in a survival situation, but it can be used as an acorn flour and a replacement to your standard wheat flour. So just right here, we've located some wild raspberries. So wild raspberries, very similar to the Arctic raspberries themselves. They'll have a lot of the same characteristics where we do see a lot of the three-leaf formation there. Again, razored leaves on the side. You do see the actual stalk of the plant itself. You can see there's all these kind of prickly spines on them here. Again, raspberries, just like the store-bought raspberries, they are a choice edible. Super sweet, super tasty. If you get in some areas where there are a lot, they can be a great item to forage. So here you can see a clump of what was previously flowers and now are developing berries with a ripe one on the end. You do want to go ahead here and pick all these when they start to hit that deeper red coloration there. Again, just exactly like you would see off your store-bought raspberries. A good thing to note is you might locate some plants when they aren't necessarily in their prime. So right now we can see some of these raspberries, they are just starting to turn red with a lot more of the berries still in the green or developmental stage. So a big thing with foraging as well is you'll oftentimes find something that you want to harvest at a later date, but it might not necessarily be in season at that moment. A good thing to always do is just pull out your Google Maps, drop a pin, and more importantly, label that pin with what it is so that, you know, if I do want to come out when it is peak season for raspberries, I can just look at my pins, look at the ones that are labeled. If you are using something like your Google Maps, you can just go up into your search bar and then type the word raspberry, and it'll actually pull up all the different pins that you've titled with raspberry on it. So again, kind of just using some of that labeling to make your life easier at the end of the day. Definitely very beneficial, and it'll save you some time in the long run. When we do hit season, you're not scrambling and looking for a place, you're just returning to some old pins that you might happen to have. So again, as you can see, right now we're in a big stretch of raspberry bushes that continues off back in here and along to the left of us here as well. So they can be another great one for kids or people just getting into foraging. Again, choice edible, super sweet, super tasty, way better than the store-bought alternative. So all around me here, we are kind of in a marsh type of a setting, but something very common that you can find all throughout Manitoba are these cattails around us here. So again, it's not necessarily something that we might consider to be #1 choice edible, but definitely something that can be utilized in a survival situation. So what a lot of people don't know is the actual base stem of the plant is edible, where it'll be white. So this is something that, again, can be harvested in areas like a marsh or a bog. One thing to take into consideration is how you're harvesting those and kind of taking proper care for that. So if you are going to harvest a cattail, pull it down and low, and that'll kind of pop out the shoot here. Again, something to be a little bit more concerned about if you might be in a dirtier water like a beaver marsh or something along that nature, is again taking your care with the end of the stalk here. So once you have actually pulled your cattail, two things can happen. So I got a happy medium kind of in between the two here, where you'll either pull out the end and you might have a few more of the exterior layers on it, or if you grab it correctly and pull, you'll kind of hear like a of the center shoot kind of sliding out. So in the case or the event where you pulled a little bit more of the stalk out, just remove a few of these exterior layers here just to expose some of the base. And the edible part will actually be this softer part, which has somewhat similar to a cucumber flavor to it, and it'll have a very soft texture. So you'll eat to where it's white here, approximately, on this one, probably about 6 or 8 inches. Up in here, I'll again have a very much like a cucumber taste. It's actually not really too bad at all, but again, probably something more that would be harvested in a survival situation. But again, it does have a nice unique flavor to it. So past this point, I wouldn't recommend eating too much past this point. You do want to eat a little bit more of that soft shoot end. Again, it's not going to be something where you're going out and foraging handfuls and handfuls just to eat this as a side to a meal. Probably something a little bit more in a survival situation. But that is not the only part of the cattails that are edible themselves. Here we can see is a seed pod that is developing. These will actually be edible when they are in the fully green stage. You'll see these seed pods themselves, they will be sheathed with kind of a protective outer coating. You want to grab it right when that sheath is still on it, or just as that begins to release. These will be small in size and will only be about the size of this top here. It'll be a little bit thicker than a number 2 pencil to about the size of a Sharpie, which would be kind of ideal for harvesting. Again, the cattail end to it, or that seed pod, will actually fully be green. It'll be very tight and very dense. Some people go ahead, you have to blanch those to cook it and break it down a little bit, but then even with simple seasonings like something like just brushed with butter, these can be very tasty. Again, a very unique flavor, not necessarily something that everybody's going to go out and forage, but it is something here in Manitoba that does open up some more opportunities. So right now we've just located some common milkweed all kind of around us here. It is very common throughout the bottom half of Manitoba. There isn't quite a lot of it in the north, but when we are taking a look at common milkweed here, most of the plant can be consumed, everything from the shoots all the way up to the seed pods themselves. But they do require quite a bit of processing itself, as they do contain a cardiac glycosides. So when we're taking a look at milkweed here, again, a very distinguishable plant. They do have these big oval leaves that most of the time when you see them, they'll kind of be up on this 45-degree angle. Sometimes they are a little bit more flat on the 90-degree. Milkweed will develop these very iconic kind of bundles of flowers. So these bundles of flowers will occur in a pink coloration. And actually just in the beginning stages, what we'll be seeing kind of around in this plant here for the actual flower buds there. Some people refer to these as being like a milkweed broccoli. So you can treat it very similar. One thing to be cognizant of is if you are cooking this up, they will absorb a lot of moisture. So things like oil and water, if you are kind of blanching it or boiling it, it will retain a lot of that liquid. So some of the preferred methods for those would actually be going ahead and steaming those parts of the plant there, just so that they don't absorb all that water. When milkweed is young, these sprouts can be eaten. It is very comparable to asparagus. The one thing to be very cognizant about if you are going to be picking milkweed is just, again, positive identification. These sprouts can look very similar to a common dog bane as well. So just knowing to identify the differences in between the two. Again, only pick it if you are certain of what you're picking. But again, these milkweed plants, they are a wonderful pollinator. As you can see, the big robust flowers, as well as the leaves themselves, are the primary food source for monarch butterflies. So just reducing your impact to one specific area. And since the milkweed leaves are a primary food source for monarch butterflies, just ensuring to not reduce the entire population of whatever you're harvesting, again, is very crucial, as they will rely on that as their main food source while they are caterpillars. But again, super tasty. Even the flowers themselves, they can be used as an edible garnish. But again, because they will contain some toxins to them, just not consuming them in a very high quantity when you are testing them out is very crucial there. You want to see how your body is going to react to some of the things you're foraging before, eating an entire side of specifically that one type of vegetable. These seed pods, when they do develop, they will form somewhat of like an ovalish shape to them there, where the cluster of flat seeds is located inside, and then they have a very fibrous top, which once those seed pods open up, the fibrous tops, they actually sail with the wind there and will get carried on to then go populate additional areas. The plant itself has had a wide variety of uses in the historical times there. Like the stems are actually very fibrous, so those would be used for things like twine or rope, or even woven into blankets. And then the actual fibrous tops of those seed pods, the little fluffy tops, they're great as a fire starter, or they were also used for things such as pillows as well. Another good tip as well is if you are a hunter and you do come across a wide variety of an area of milkweed like this, is if you do end up taking one of those actual milkweed seed pods, again, do it in an area where there are a lot so that the rest can reproduce. But if you carry that seed pod with you or in your hunting bag, they can actually be used as a natural wind indicator, where you can pull it out by the seed, and as long as that fibrous top is still attached, when you drop that from your tree stand or out the window of your ground blind, the wind will carry that in whatever direction the wind's going, making it a great wind indicator. So here, this would be a little bit of a younger, smaller plant, but as you can see, this is the distinct shape that a milkweed seed pod would have. This is still early on in the development. You will see these grow in size and get a little prickly on the outside, at which point the actual seed pod, as you can see the seam here, will actually split across that seam, opening up the seed pod itself, where then the heavier seeds can be carried off by the wind, and the tops of those fluffy seeds, they're carrying those with wind current, or again, as we had mentioned, it's something that can be used as a wind indicator if you are hunting as well. So just right here, we've located Broadleaf Plantain. So Broadleaf Plantain is actually a species that is very, very common. It's actually probably something where you most likely have it in your driveway right now. It does grow very well in poor soil conditions, so a lot of the time you will see it right on the sides of trails or even in a gravel driveway where it's growing. It's an easily identifiable plant once you have seen it and once you have been able to identify it. The fact where it has a lot of very distinguishing factors to it. So the plantain species within Manitoba, there isn't a lot that looks like them, so it is a pretty easy thing to identify, especially once you have seen it a couple times and once you actually know what it is. So this right here is the broadleaf plantain. It'll grow in a rosette shape where the leaf bases will just be overlapping. And then it will have these pine cone appearance style tall flowering bodies to them here, growing off the flower stalk. And then the seeds will actually be the brown parts there that will be released once they have reached maturity. So broadleaf plantain does have a lot of uses for it. It is an anti-inflammatory, so it is a great thing for anything like stinging nettle bites, for bug bites, poison ivy, a lot of skin irritations. It's a great one, especially if you are out in the field. It can just be harvested by just simply pulling at the base here where the plant can be removed. As you can see, it is very fibrous, both on the stalk and as well in the actual leaf themselves. They'll have these kind of thicker fibers to it. So it can be eaten raw or it can be cooked. It may have a slightly bitter flavor to it. So again, it might not necessarily be a choice edible, but it's great for a lot of medicinal purposes there. If it is dried, you can use it in oil extracts. It is also very commonly used in things like ointments, lotions, balms, salves, a lot of things of that nature for its anti-inflammatory properties. And again, if you are in the bush, I know we were on a canoe trip for myself. I had some really bad poison ivy on the leg and nothing to really treat it with. You can use it as a poultice. So essentially just taking like a portion of leaf like this, just throwing it in your mouth there and chewing it around, kind of mush that up and release some of the plant materials there. And then spreading it on your affected area, whether that's a bug bite or a sting or something potentially even like poison ivy. Very beneficial in those use cases when, again, there may not be any other options. So broadleaf plantain, it is a very small plant, generally very short. So a lot of the time, if you're seeing this on something like a driveway or on a gravel drive, that'll be a lot smaller. So they can be as low as just an inch off the ground or splayed right across the ground. In some of your more natural settings here, the broadleaf plantain can grow as tall as generally about a foot tall. There is a cousin to broadleaf plantain. It's the narrowleaf plantain. It'll have a lot of the exact same medicinal values, and that can also be eaten raw or cooked. The biggest difference between narrowleaf and broadleaf is the narrowleaves, just like it says in the name, they're a lot more narrow and a little bit longer. They'll also be just a little bit more low to the ground, whereas some of the broadleaf plantain will grow a little bit higher there. So right beside us here, we've located some red clover. So even though it is called red clover, it can be easily distinguished here because it will have kind of these dark pink or kind of magenta coloration in flowers here. So like other types of clover here, you are looking for that typical 3-leaf clover pattern. It's an easy way to identify them. And then again, with the clover, it does have these very distinct kind of flower balls on top. So these can be cooked or they can be eaten raw. So they make a great edible flower here as a garnish or things of that nature. So pink clover does have a variety of uses. It can be used to treat things like osteoporosis, arthritis, heart disease, as well as menstrual and menopause symptoms as well. It'll even help to reduce things like hot flashes as well as night sweats. So the flowers are typically what's harvested off of red clover, and these will be used in things like essential oils. So typically what's harvested and utilized the most off red clover is these actual pinkish magenta flowers. So these will typically be used in things such as like essential oils. Again, you'll find them in certain things as well, like balms and salves, as well if people have incorporated those essential oils into those balms and salves, lotions, things of that nature. So here we've located a bunch of common yarrow. So yarrow can easily be identified by these long fern-like kind of feathery spear leaves that they happen to have. So when you feel it, it's going to be very soft, very feather-like, both in the appearance and the feel. When you see the actual plant itself, these are a perennial that will grow back year over year. And so when we do see these here, generally they're a little bit shorter, but you will see these grow all the way up to 3 or 4 feet tall. Once they do hit the point where they do develop buds as well as flowers, they can easily be located just when glancing across an area of prairie like this. You can just see all the different white tops of these little discs of white flowers kind of appearing here. Again, it's a very distinct plant with both the leaves and the flowering tops. It makes it relatively easy to locate and identify there. Yarrow does have a ton of different uses there, a lot of these being for antiseptic properties as well as to reduce inflammation. So back in the day, it used to be used as things like a poultice to go ahead there and place in things like wounds to stop or even slow or even stop bleeding, and just to help reduce and prevent infection as well. So yarrow does have a wide variety of uses. It can actually be utilized while it is fresh or while it's dried. It's also very common to see in things like teas, tinctures, oils, vinegars, or even as a poultice to go ahead and pack into wounds and either slow or totally stop bleeding in total. It'll also help with the pain reduction, inflammation, and helps to prevent infection as well. Yarrow can also be used to aid in stomach aches, digestive issues, headaches, colds, and even respiratory problems as well. So here we've gone ahead, we've located another plant around. This is also one that is very common, especially in an urban setting. Again, does really well in very poor soil conditions, or you'll even find it growing in the cracks of your driveway or in gravel patch areas. So this right here would be pineapple weed. So you can tell it's got a really frilly, almost fern-like leaf as well, just a little bit more spread out and displaced. Pineapple weed does have this little top on it here as well, which will be the flower itself. So as these start to mature, these will turn a deeper yellow and grow a little bit more in size. These are actually referred to, or a lot of people do refer to these as wild chamomile, and they will be very similar in taste as well. So a lot of people will go ahead there, pick these, and then go ahead, dry that out and utilize that on things like teas. So all around me here is prairie sage. Prairie sage is something that's very easy to identify, especially in a prairie type of a landscape. As you can see here, in comparison to a lot of the other greens that are around, prairie sage will always have this somewhat lighter, almost frosty color appearance. So prairie sage, one of the biggest common uses that it's known for is within smudge ceremonies, where it will be gathered, tied into smudge sticks, and then burnt as an ember to release that scent and again smudge an area. Prairie sage can also be used interchangeably as you would your typical seasoning sage. So instead of having to go out and buy it, it's something you can go out and happily forage. It's great on things like wild games or even wild game meat or even store-bought meats as well. If you are going to be harvesting sage, a very important thing to note is how to harvest the sage. So instead of just grabbing the whole plant down at the base of the stalk and pulling, this will actually remove the entire root system of the plant. That's best to be avoided if at all possible. Even if you are in something that might be a meadow with a fair amount of sage in it, just using responsible harvesting practices. So again, if I was going to harvest this portion, I might take only like the upper third and remove that. But again, as I move through this area, due to the density of the sage here, I can still come pick some tops off some sage, more than enough of what I would need in a year, and not make a negative impact to the entire patch that's here by just using those responsible foraging practices and really only picking what I need and taking the plant's health into consideration as well. So we'll just go over a quick gear breakdown. A lot of the items that you'll see here today won't be necessary for things like urban foraging, where you have a lot of the local amenities around you here, but they will be a little bit more crucial if you're planning on doing things that go off trail or doing full days out in the backwoods of foraging for things like mushrooms, plants, or berries. So right away to start off here, a couple things that are really nice to have. Obviously keeping some water on you, especially in these hot summer days, super important. Another alternative to that, you can also use things like a hydration bladder in a hydration bag as well. Super handy to just throw it on the back and carry it around and really not have to worry about a water bottle. To go along with those as well, a package of electrolytes is always really good to carry on you, as well as a snack like a protein bar. Just keep that energy up, or again, if worst case scenario comes along, you happen to get displaced in the woods there, end up somewhere where you're not expecting, at least you got a little snack here as well. Next, we'll just get into some bug protection items. So again, this year hasn't been super bad, but on years where the mosquitoes are terrible, Thermacell is almost a necessity. So these work really good for mosquito prevention, alongside with things like a bug net. If you're not into the Thermacell or bug spray, having something like a bug net and long clothing to put over yourself can be very important there just to keep those bugs off. Just personally, some things I like to keep a bag with a couple additional bags, as well as some plastic gloves in those. It works great if you come across stuff where, again, you might find a mushroom that's covered by a bunch of poison ivy. If it is something you're gonna pick and you are allergic, I'll always throw a pair of gloves on or bags just to separate things and kind of keep those organized and just keep your different harvests aside from themselves if it's not something you wanna mix. Next up, either a knife or a multi-tool. Always really handy to have in case, again, with a lot of the mushrooms, you do want to cut them at the base, or a multi-tool in case you come across something that you need to utilize it for. Always great to have in the bag. So a bucket is something I like to use, just a standard bucket, about a 1 gallon size if at all possible, with that neck strap as we had talked about a little bit earlier there. Just helps to, again, wear your bucket and kind of be hands-free while you are going around and harvesting anything that you are looking for. If you're doing mushrooms, one thing I might recommend is either a bucket with slots in it or potentially even a mesh bag. That'll allow spores and seeds to go ahead there and fall out of that bucket or whatever your carrying device is, and then populate additional parts of the forest as well. So something to go along hand in hand with our bucket, a berry picker. These can be very beneficial in increasing the yield of berries that you collect. One thing to note with any berry picker is actually like how to utilize a berry picker. So these can be great for things like Saskatoons or blueberries. Just keep in mind if you are using a berry picker, kind of when you are using it, not to just rake the whole plant. You'll get a lot of extra debris in there, things like leaves, stem stalks, or just total plant damage in general. Obviously, we don't want to do that. We want to leave the plants to be as healthy as possible for future foraging events and for continued health. And then as well, if you are just kind of lightly scooping, especially things like blueberries, when you come across a sea of them there, as you are scooping them in there, if you're a little bit more gentle and kind of tease the berries off the bush and just collect berries, it'll make your processing and cleaning at the end of the day a whole lot neater. And the time you end up saving by just raking a bush and collecting all the plant matter, all that time will be spent cleaning the berries as well. So just investing a little bit of extra time in just actually clean scooping there will prevent a little bit of wasted time later on down the road and help out the plants. Lastly here again, this is a Garmin GPS. I would recommend GPS, especially if you're going to be doing a little bit more of these bigger day trips and things of that nature and going areas that are off trail. Again, in urban foraging, a cell phone like Google Maps will suffice. But if you are going into the backwoods, a GPS is always super handy to have, and definitely do a little bit of practicing beforehand, just so you're comfortable with your platform before you get out into the bush. And so lastly, one of the things that we'll touch base on here is just responsible foraging practices. So again, when we are actually going to be foraging items, 2 things to be mindful of. Again, how we pick the plant. So if I am picking this pineapple weed here, you know, and I do just want these flower tops, well, I'll do my best just to remove the tops themselves. I'm not grabbing and ripping out this whole plant so that we're doing damage here. Again, just being responsible about that is going to maintain the plant health. It's going to make sure we can come back here in future years and then harvest again in the same spots and potentially even from the same plants that we've harvested from in previous years. This Assiniboine Forest urban foraging here is actually a great example for this, because as you can see, we're right along the edge of a path. So knowing where you're foraging and what could potentially be in the area is also important, not only for plant location of the edibles or medicinal plants that we're foraging, but as well for chemicals and things that might happen to be used as well. Within urban foraging, it might be something where you're picking things on the side of a road or potentially even in a ditch. So knowing that it's a clean area that you're picking from, again, kind of being mindful that there's not going to be a lot of road waste, whether that's, you know, oil and windshield washer fluid or salts and sands that have been spread throughout the winter. These will accumulate in things like ditches. That might be super common for asparagus harvest. So just being mindful that it's not, again, you know, right off the side of #1 highway where there's going to be a lot of contaminants in whatever you're picking, or even if you're in your own yard, you know, again, watching out for fertilizers and pesticides that you might have used. Again, if you have used these, kind of just avoiding those areas. And then just, again, a general rule of thumb, always know what you're picking. It's way better to take a few photos of the plant and positively identify it and come back and pick that at a later point rather than rush into it, pick from a contaminated area or pick things that we don't quite know what it is. And then again, let's use just this grass as an example here. This was a grass species I was looking to identify, or any other plant. Not just taking a photo of one identifiable trait, but rather taking a photo of multiple parts of the plant. So if I was using this grass species here, well, I would want to take a photo of the top, maybe part way down the plant. If we have any distinguishable leaves, like for example our plantain, taking a photo of the leaves and just getting some well-rounded photos to compare with examples online when you return home, and then you have your ability to do your full research and positively identify things that might be of interest to you. Thank you so much for tagging along with us here at Manitoba Wildlife Federation and our urban foraging within the Assiniboine Forest. If this is more stuff that you'd like to see, definitely go ahead, like the video, leave some comments for us. We'd appreciate any feedback there, and it just helps to get us out and do more of these types of videos.